What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Peanut Gallery Podcast, episode 41. It's been a hot second, man. It's been a little while.
A little bit of a hiatus.
Yes. Why have we done that? There's been some
because
big
literally,
life
like,
events.
everything happened.
What's on your ring finger? When is? There you go. You got married. That's a pretty big life event.
Man.
I mean, that's like a once, twice, three times in a lifetime.
Well,
kind of
I will
thing,
be honest. You know? So yeah, I got married. It was awesome. Honeymoon in Venice, freaking awesome.
There you go.
I kind of want to do it again. Like, it was dope. I'd love to do it. It was awesome. Yeah, I got married. Got a new job. Had to start. Had to outrun a hurricane, and then got to deal with it as a tropical depression up here. Yeah, which was always fun.
And I've been doing like tons of stuff too. Yeah. So
no, it's been crazy, dude. Like, I don't know. It was the break was kind of nice, but like we had just talked about,
it's great to be back.
It's great to be back. Sorry for you guys. It just happened. It was we got so busy with everything, and then so I've been out of the country for 2.5 weeks.
It's gonna be hard to record if you're in Venice.
Yeah, it would have been dope though. Dude, I could have recorded at like St. Mark's or something.
Exactly.
Oh, that would have been amazing. But I'm happy to be back, dude, and
it's great to be back. Yeah. We got a lot to talk about. What we're going to kind of do with this video is we're going to mainly talk about the horrible tragedy that happened last weekend in Nevada and Las Vegas. We're going to kind of talk about the reactions to it, our reactions to it, right way to respond, wrong way to respond. But a couple things we want to talk about first before we jump into that is there was a massive hurricane, obviously, that came through. We had Harvey, Irma, and then Puerto Rico.
Well, we had Jose.
Maria. I think Maria
there was so many, dude.
Yeah, there was a lot, but Maria was the one that hit Puerto Rico, and it kind of completely devastated the island.
Well, a lot of islands have been devastated, but Puerto Rico has been a lot in the news because it is a U.S. territory, and we just wanted to just mention that because, and like... There's
been a lot of charity and stuff like that people have given.
Because they needed to. Like, their whole island basically got knocked out with power. I don't know what the situation is now, but I knew for a while, like, the whole island, and it's going to be months before they're even close to ready.
Yeah.
But
I don't really want to comment on the political climate. Obviously, there's been kind of stuff like between Trump and the mayor, but I'm not an expert on it, relief or anything like that.
No, we're just here. I wish I had money to send. I just don't have the money right now. But like, I've seen awesome GoFundMe's and stuff. I know Casey Neistat had a great one that raised like $250,000 in like 2 days, which is awesome. And then there was another big one that was, I think, over $4 million now. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome, people. And I mean, I know there's been a lot of aid we've sent. Yeah. So I'm just. Everyone in Puerto Rico, if there's anyone in Puerto Rico, we hope you're doing all right. Probably not seeing this if you don't have power, but
if you're financially able, absolutely give.
If you want to,
that,
it's. I mean, they are part of America. We should be there to help.
Citizens, so
absolutely.
Well, with that being said, guys, this is the Peanut Gallery Podcast. This, of course, is the place that we provide our completely unprofessional and insignificant opinions about the most important and significant topics of the day. I'm your host, Jared, and with me, as always, is Seth, and we're going to jump right into the main topic of the video. All right, guys, we are back, and we're going to jump right into the main topic of the show. And like we talked about before, the whole show is going to basically be dedicated to the Las Vegas shooting. Mm-hmm. What we first want to do is just kind of talk about the proper way to respond, or at least what we think is the proper way to respond to such a horrible, heinous act, a tragedy like we experienced in Las Vegas. And I would say that the best thing to do is to not politicize it after the first 5 minutes of it happening.
I think the best way is, like you said, don't politicize it. It's not about the shooter. It's about the victims. I mean, there was, 58 now dead? 59 dead, over 500 people injured. I mean, I think, the most we can do is pray and hope that the 500, the majority of them come out fine at the end of it. I think there's,
last time I checked, still almost 50 people in critical condition, too. And obviously, like you said, we pray for those lives. But in critical condition, if you're ever in critical conditions, likely if you survive, and hopefully they all do, but you're still going to suffer those wounds. A lot of times those are life-changing things. So I think we should just kind of have a moment of silence for those people.
Both the people we've lost and also the people that are fighting. Like, still, there's people fighting for their lives in, like you said, critical conditions. So we can't forget those either.
Absolutely.
But I think we should just do a quick moment of silence for them.
So, like we were saying, I think that at least one, I wouldn't say a silver lining, but something that Americans have typically done after horrible tragedies like this is unify. Right?
Yes, that's the most the status, but also a great part is that when push comes to shove and horrible things happen, you do see the American spirit breakthrough that is so hidden when everything's going well.
Absolutely.
Which I kind of like, because it is one of those things. It's like when everything's going well, we can complain about the little things, but when
stuff hits
the fan,
yeah,
that's where you kind of see true character. So that's really invigorating to me that we've seen so many great things. You've seen the massive lines of people coming up to donate blood. I mean, well, from what I last heard was that they have so much blood they need supplies, actually. Like, the blood is outdoing the supplies they have to take blood in, which is great.
Yeah. And so many amazing heroic stories that we've heard from people during this shooting. People, you know, who are there and have trucks and just transporting like 30 25, 30 people at a time. People jumping on top of other people to save them. EMTs running in and just kind of helping people. Of course, you saw, you know, the police officers are running towards this.
Dude, that's like the craziest
fire.
thing when you think about it. You know, like, literally every instinct in your body is going to be telling you, get out, like, get safe. But the police officers, without any hesitation, go right in, and they had an amazing response time to finding him.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just to be commended, and they're super efficient. And it could have been much worse had they taken longer. That's awesome. And I mean, there's that one story of, I think it was a Marine that stole a truck to transport people to the hospital.
Yeah,
like, that's awesome. Like, the fact
incredible
that he was going to put his life on the line in the sense of breaking a law because their lives are more important than whatever's might happen to him. I don't think he's going to get in trouble, honestly.
No, and I'm sure the person would be totally fine with that. But notice, we're intentionally not going to name the shooter who did this heinous act. Despicable. He's a despicable person.
He's an evil person.
He's burning in hell right now for what he did, and we really want to focus on the victims and then also the heroes of this story and really bring light to them, because that's what really matters in an instance like this, is talking about how people were able to come together. Like you said, the blood donations have been absolutely incredible.
Insane, dude.
In Vegas, there's been almost 4,000 people got together and they just sang Amazing Grace after this. I thought that it was pretty impactful. Here's a little bit of footage of that.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see.
So in light of all that and the incredible unity and stuff like that we saw, of course, there were obviously people who came out and responded how we would, you know, not responding well to a tragedy like this.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah.
And I think we've had enough time. I mean, I think it's okay for us, because I do hate when it's immediately become political.
Absolutely,
political.
So here's the thing: if it happens, and your first inclination is to push your political agenda, I think that is heinous. I think it's immoral, and I don't like that at all.
It's manipulative, honestly.
Yeah, totally, because you're playing off people's emotion.
Right.
But I think that there's definitely a time and a place to discuss the policy. I think a week after, 5 days after is a time where you can talk about policy, where you can fix it, where you cannot. But literally hours after, when you're waking up Monday morning and hearing about this horrible tragedy, if your first inclination is, oh, let me tweet out about how the NRA is a terrorist organization, or if you're Hillary
Who would
Clinton,
do that?
Yeah, I know, right? So if you're Hillary Clinton, a couple people we want to just kind of highlight and point out, this is just not a good way to respond to this. So, of course, Hillary Clinton, who just can't go away. She's still around.
Get out of here.
Can't go away. She comes out and she tweets, Las Vegas, we are grieving with you, the victims, those who lost loved ones, the responders, and all affected by this cold-blooded massacre. So that was good. That's perfect.
If she'd ended it there, I would have been on board.
But like 5 seconds later, she tweets out, the crowd fled at the sound of gunshots. Imagine the deaths if the shooter had a silencer, which the NRA wants to make easier to get.
Right.
So one, this just displays how she has no idea what it's really a suppressor, but what a silencer actually does.
No.
But
she thinks it's Hollywood, where the gun's going to be completely silent.
Exactly.
Not to mention the fact that we could have the argument on what a suppressor actually does and how effective it actually is making it silent. That's not even... they weren't even used.
Yeah.
It wasn't
It's
even.
not even relevant.
It's like,
to
well,
this
okay, well, I mean,
circumstance.
if he had grenades,
Imagine
if he had throwing
grenades.
knives.
Yeah.
It's like you could. It's to me, it's completely ridiculous for you to even tweet this out. And also, like you said, there is a fine line on the time to discuss this because yes. Right away, not the time. But eventually, I think there is a time because
Absolutely.
things like this are bad. I don't think anyone just
And if
disputes
there's
that.
solutions, obviously they should be discussed.
Right.
And debates should be had
And it's
about
an
policy.
issue when someone is able to kill this many people. This was the biggest massacre in modern American history. Like,
Yeah.
we need, like, it would be, to me personally, it's disrespectful to the victims if we don't use this as a learning experience to maybe make it so it doesn't happen again. And
Absolutely.
I do think, as we're going to get in later, there are things that we can take away from this to maybe learn and do better next time because it does suck. But at the same time, we need to understand that, okay, this happened. What can we, like, there has to be something we can take out of this. There's new information we can glean from this.
Yeah.
But again, like she did it the day after I saw these tweets go up.
Oh, she did it at 10 in the morning on Monday.
Yeah,
which people
like,
woke up
what
Monday
are you
morning to hear
doing?
about
And then
it.
shouldn't she also tweet about how it doesn't need to be politicized and then immediately
Comes
through
with
a
that.
political? So yeah, Hillary Clinton, always just the golden child of civility and
But you know what? A CBS vice president was
Oh,
like, hold
might
my
have
beer.
won up.
I can
Hold my
top
beer.
this.
Yeah.
I can top this. So what did what did
Yeah,
she
so
have to say?
a CBS actually like a vice president named
Oh, she made
Haley
it up that way.
Getfield Gold. She I guess it was in like a private conversation that got leaked or whatever. Like she didn't post it publicly, but it was within a conversation that then they screenshotted and produced. She
Okay.
said if they wouldn't do anything when the children were murdered, obviously in Sandy Hook, right?
Mhm.
And when she says they, she's talking about the Republicans. So
course.
if they wouldn't do anything when the children were murdered, I have no hope that Repubs will ever do the right thing. I'm actually not even sympathetic, but because country music fans often are Republican gun toters.
So once again, if she had stopped at the first thing, it's still politicizing it, and that's pretty bad. But then if you come out and say, I'm not sympathetic to these people,
Right.
you have no idea
No.
what political beliefs they have. And frankly, it doesn't matter at all.
No, they could be Republican gun toters.
Totally.
No one deserves to get murdered at any music concert.
Yeah.
Right? If it's country, if it's whatever, like. No, like innocent people, like, no, that's super ridiculous. And thankfully, CBS was freaking swift. Fired her, put out a statement saying this individual who was with us for approximately 1 year. I like how they were like, no, she wasn't with us for long. She was
only a
with
year,
them
got
for a
rid of her.
year. She violated the standards of our company and is no longer an employee of CBS.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I like that they quickly did that because there is people like that have opinions like that. I don't know how she became vice president.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of crazy. This isn't just a little opinion of someone. Like if someone is that, I mean, it's another response, I think, in a effect of how separated and divisive politics have become when you can look at
Absolutely.
the other side and be like, I'm not sympathetic 59 people died because
they don't agree with my
they were
political
probably
agenda.
the opposite side of the political spectrum, so it's
Absolutely.
okay. Like if you're wishing death or happy or not sympathetic that they died, like I don't wish for any Democrat. I don't like Hillary Clinton. I don't want her to die.
No, absolutely
You don't
not.
deserve to be murdered
No.
at a concert. Like no,
Absolutely
that's
not.
ridiculous. So good on CBS. I mean, that was a good thing CBS
CBS
did.
won. But then
And-
it gets kind of taken away right here because CBS comes out and tweets this out in reaction to the Las Vegas shooting. They say, quote, while guns the shooter used in Las Vegas fired automatic rounds, they were perfectly legal under ATF rules.
Right.
So first off, I didn't know automatic rounds existed.
I think they're similar to the double shot scope that we've heard about before.
No,
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 see, this is
totally.
one of those things where I don't think they did this on purpose. I just think they're ignorant to what they're talking about. I don't think
That's
they were.
optimistic of
I don't
me.
think they were intentionally like we're gonna try to trick people.
Yeah.
I think they knew automatic is a buzzword. And they did know what the heck they were talking about, but it's misinformation like this
It's
that
still
harms
crappy to
the
tweet out
conversation.
something that you have no idea what
True.
the heck you're talking about.
Right, and I
Because
mean,
if you don't know, automatic rounds do not exist. There are
Right.
just ammunition that are fired from either automatic weapons or semi-automatic.
and I don't even
weapons.
think is a 5.56, which was used in the AR, that was used by AR. I mean, is that what automatic gun uses at? Military rifles don't. They use NATO rounds, which are not.
I think it's a
5.56.
5.56 NATO round.
That's a different round though, because
It
we have
might be.
civilian rounds. I don't know, but anyway, regardless, like,
Yeah.
they're not like. Sorry, it is a buzzword. I mean, I don't think it was like anything really bad. They were just kind of trying to make it that, this is perfectly
Automatic
legal.
rounds don't exist.
They don't exist. And I think what you're going to see with a lot of what we talk about, there's just a lot of misinformation that gets thrown out because of emotion, because of fear, and maybe they're trying to capitalize on it. I mean, they're news organizations, they want the clicks.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm hesitant to just immediately assume that they're trying to undermine something.
Yeah.
I think they're just stupid.
I think at this point they haven't corrected this statement.
Yeah.
So that's kind of because obviously
Just
there were
delete the
tons
tweet,
of
man.
people. Yeah, there were tons of people who tweeted back like, "What the
And
heck?"
it's
is
hard
an
to have a
automatic round? What
conversation
is
when
this?
someone doesn't know what they're talking about.
Exactly.
It's like we can't have an honest discussion if we don't know what we're discussing, which is a big problem with the gun debate because there is so much misinformation.
Yeah.
And honestly, confusing information.
Yeah.
Semi-automatic, automatic sounds similar if people don't think about it.
And people who don't know, they're like, "Oh, the ATF approves automatic rounds. This is terrible. We need new gun control."
They don't even know what the ATF is. Guaranteed. The
Right,
majority of people.
ATU
I don't know what
what?
it stands for, but I know what it does. I know you need a tax stamp. I understand ATF and stuff, but I don't know what it stands for.
Alcohol, tobacco, fire.
There you go. Okay, I learned
Yes.
something. But I understand where they fall, but I think the majority of people are going to be like, "Oh, they're legal." So what you're saying is you can buy an automatic gun. That's what
Yeah.
it sounds
I
like.
think that you're
When
right.
if you're actually
unfortunately.
educated, you understand automatic weapons have been illegal for decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
In the 1930s, there was a law, and then again in 1986.
Yeah,
outlawed
automatic
fully
guns are
automatic
illegal.
weapons.
So you can get them with a tax stamp and a long process and a lot of money, but it's not easy. Majority
And
of people
permission
don't have
of the
them.
sheriff in your county. For
Also,
most states,
majority
yeah.
of shootings aren't even involving that, but
Also,
we're not
they're
gonna-
in the thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for an automatic weapon.
plus to buy the ammo because
Yeah,
I don't know if
exactly.
you guys
It's
know,
very,
ammo's
very
expensive.
expensive.
It's
Very
not a cheap
expensive.
hobby to like guns.
But of course, it didn't stop there. There's more outrage about it. Keith Olbermann, who was a reporter, I know for ESPN, and then I think
I'm
he
glad we
moved
have an
somewhere-
ESPN
Yeah, I
reporter
know, great.
commenting on guns.
But he moved on, and he actually said that the NRA is a terrorist organization, and then that he said that quote the group enables such massacres.
Right.
So this I really have a problem with. When you say that someone, and we'll kind of talk about this a little bit later with Jimmy Kimmel, he's been doing this kind of thing recently. But when you're saying that a group or a person enables an action because they don't agree with your personal political agenda, that's a problem, okay?
Well, just labeling this organization that enables a massacre of this many people,
absolutely.
it's
Be completely clear about this. The only person responsible for this heinous act is the person who was on the 32nd floor of the hotel room pulling the trigger.
Right.
Nobody else is responsible for it. Not Republicans, not Democrats,
not the people that sold them the
yeah,
guns.
exactly. Not the firearms distribution centers
Not
who
the people
sold
he
them
bought
the
the
guns.
ammo from.
Nobody but him is responsible for this horrible act.
It's very hard to understand for a lot of people, but I totally agree. It's the person that chooses to do this. Guns don't kill people. Well,
Exactly.
I
We
can set my
didn't
gun on the
say
table,
that
it'll never go off.
the recent shooter who shot Steve Scalise, who was a
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders supporter, worked on his campaign. We didn't say it was Bernie Sanders'
Oh,
fault.
most people didn't. Yeah,
No, because
it's
that's
not.
stupid.
Yeah.
Because it's not. It's the person's fault who actually committed the act. And it's
Right.
not. It's a very elementary principle to understand. It's
Yeah, if you don't
very
know, the
simple.
NRA is the National Rifle Association. They're basically the only thing that has sway that wants to keep Second Amendment rights. which-
Aside from the majority of the American populace
This
as well.
is also true. But then, to enable such it's just, what are you doing, man? And again,
It's
spreading
stuff.
misinformation. Honestly, I think it's contributing to the idea of that getting people's heads that the CBS vice president had of them being like, well, I don't care, the Republicans,
Yeah.
Republicans.
If
the
you
NRA
say that
supports Republicans, and you're saying the NRA supports is a terrorist organization, then
Yeah.
it's not hard to draw a line to say Republicans are terrorists.
It's like the punch a Nazi. If you think it's okay to punch a Nazi, you just label someone a Nazi, you can punch them. If
Exactly.
you label Republicans complicit in this act, it's okay to condemn them and say they're responsible for it.
Yeah, and it's completely ridiculous. And then you've also seen politicians. I saw there's 2 lawmakers in Florida that are trying to now unveil a bill to ban assault-style weapons.
Which
This
we had
bothers
under
me.
Bill Clinton.
Exactly. This bothers me because we have proof.
Statistics.
Quantitative proof
Yeah.
that it does nothing. We had assault rifles banned for a while
Yeah,
in the
almost 10
90s
years.
from Bill Clinton,
Mhm.
and there was no proof that it actually did any good in stopping shootings, because if people actually did their research and understood that the vast majority of shootings are not
rifles.
inflicted by assault style weapons.
Yeah.
And then we're not even going to get into the garbage that is assault style weapons. But so yeah, I mean, this irks me because you're just capitalizing on the fear right now.
Actually, and people's emotions. And
yeah,
people's
and
sympathies
I'm a little bit even towards like, so it takes a while, I feel like, to draft a bill, right?
Yeah.
And this just happened,
Mhm.
and the lawmakers are busy. I'm assuming they have stuff on their plate, right?
Absolutely.
So
they have stuff scheduled.
what are the chances that they had this bill waiting and they're like, oh, this is a good time to put it forward? You know?
Yeah.
Like, is it more likely that they put everything aside to quickly draft this bill? That's totally conjecture and just me thinking, but it's like it's just it's too coincidental to me personally that they're like, oh, we just happen to have this bill that we want to suppress assault weapons again. Like, no, get out of here. It's not going to pass in Florida. Florida has the most guns out of any state. I am not worried about it, but it's just kind of scummy to me personally that they did this.
Absolutely. But it doesn't stop there. If you've seen, Jimmy Kimmel's kind of been the most recent almost social justice,
at least the biggest one.
Yeah,
man.
the biggest one. He's been touted out by a lot of people,
right?
Who agree with his position. He had the whole famous kind of. We covered it actually when he talked about healthcare with his son who underwent that tragic heart disease that was fixed, which is great. But he politicized his son, which he completely admitted to. He said that he did that. We covered it in another video. You can watch that if you want, where we talk about, we kind of outline why that's a problem and why that's not the best approach for legislation for a country as a whole. But he jumps on it again immediately with the Las Vegas shooting. And I think that Jimmy Kimmel is doing this sincerely out of what he believes.
Yes,
I mean, there were reports that he was talking with Chuck Schumer and stuff like that about different policies. I don't know, but he seems very sincere. You can't argue that.
And that's what, like we did with the hospital. Like, I do think he believes this, and that's fine. He can believe whatever he wants. I don't care. But when he starts pulling forward, like we'll show in a little bit, misinformation, false information, condemning people on the other side with no actual reasoning or proof of reason why to condemn them. Like, that's when it's like, okay, I feel like you're trying to take advantage of people. It's
pretty misleading. We're going to show a clip now where he talks about how nothing will happen because the Republicans are in the pocket of the NRA, and then he talks about how Republicans' prayers and thoughts and stuff like that aren't acceptable to him because they disagree with him. So here's a video of that, and then we'll talk about it a little more after that.
The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, a number of other lawmakers who won't do anything about this because the NRA has their balls in a money clip, also sent their thoughts and their prayers today, which is good. They should be praying. They should be praying for God to forgive them for letting the gun lobby run this country, because it is it's so crazy. Right now, there are loopholes in the law that let people avoid background checks if they buy a gun privately from another party, if they buy a gun online or at a gun show. So I want to show you something. These are the faces of the senators who, days after the shooting in Orlando, voted against a bill that would have closed those loopholes. These are the 56 senators who didn't want to do anything about that. Now, 90% of Democrats, I'm not talking about politicians here, I'm talking about people, and 77% of Republicans support background checks at gun shows. 89% of Republicans and Democrats are in favor of restricting gun ownership for the mentally ill. But not this gang. They voted against both of those things. So with all due respect, your thoughts and your prayers are insufficient.
Okay, so just to be very clear before we kind of dissect this, neither one of us are saying that he shouldn't be allowed to say this. Like, this is not us saying it's bad that he said this. This is just us critiquing. I don't care. He can say this. I have no problem that he said this. I very much like that. I've seen Ben Shapiro, Crowder. It got picked up on Twitter. A lot of people, kind of rebutting this because it is full of misinformation. I think. And so neither one of us, because I can easily see people being like, "Well, see, he's just trying to give speech, and you're trying to sound something." No, I don't care that he said this.
Yeah.
I just think it's up to scrutiny. We can do this, and we can say, "Listen, this is wrong," and a lot of what he said was it's factually inaccurate.
A lot of it is, and then also the part when he talked about how your prayers aren't acceptable, kind of thing.
Why?
Like, who made him the arbiter of morality? Right? That's a problem.
Well,
man.
Obviously, God was like,
Jimmy
Dude,
Kimmel.
Yo, hey, listen,
my second son.
Haven't you seen Bruce Almighty?
Yeah,
Kimmel Almighty, man. I do think a lot of it, like it was in the moment. You know, it was raw emotion. So, I mean, I give him a little bit of leeway with that. Like, I don't think he was literally trying to be like telling people of religious faiths that their prayers. I think it was kind of just a heat of the moment thing. But with the thing about the NRA, I have a harder time believing because it was so he nailed into that point.
I think he definitely knew it would be effective to push.
Yeah,
what
but
he was
if you
doing.
just even look at the simple information of how much money the NRA gives to people lobbying, which we're not even going to get into the discussion of whether or not you think lobbying is right. It happens. So the amount of money the NRA gives to congressmen, politicians is not a lot. We looked it up. There's how many?
We looked at it. There was like 18,900 something organizations that donate money to congressmen that lobby and stuff like that, and they're like 490th something like
Right.
that. So it's not like they're in the top 10.
No, you look at any of the unions, you look at the oil companies, vastly out lobby and give out way more money, majority to Democrats, which is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it happens. So
Absolutely.
this idea that the NRA is a super powerful, horrible organization, that again, he seems to kind of infer that they don't mind that this happens.
And by the way, if you don't agree with him, then you're complicit in what's happened, right?
Right.
Because
He's
you're
blaming you
You're
almost.
okay with these mass shootings because you don't want gun laws passed. Which, by the way, no gun laws that were passed would have stopped this guy.
And that, okay, yeah. So that's another issue, which is another thing to talk about. So this man that did the shooting, he bought all of his guns legally. All of the people he bought his guns from said that he seemed perfectly fine.
Passed
he
all the
passed
background
all the
checks.
background checks.
He had a pilot's license, which means he underwent a mental kind of capacity
Evaluation,
test, a mental
right.
evaluation, exactly.
Right,
So
and
he
then
didn't have a
his
known mental
brother
illness.
and his girlfriend, whatever, said he wasn't really a gun guy.
Yeah, they were completely shocked.
Right,
Which
so
is crazy because he owned like
he was
40
crazy,
something.
right? And so it's like there's nothing that we could have passed to stop this. This is one of those weird things. Like, what are you supposed to pass? Besides making guns completely illegal, which every politician will tell you they're not trying to do.
Yeah.
We're not trying to
We're not
outlaw
trying
guns.
to do this.
That's the only thing that would have maybe worked.
And which it would never happen in the United
Exactly.
States.
So
Because
that's-
if you make them all illegal, say you did it tomorrow and everyone was fine with it, there would be 300 million guns
Yeah.
on the black market that people would be getting that you could go then do
Right.
mass shooting.
So that's yeah, exactly. And the Kimmel thing. It's just like I feel he has a huge platform, and I do
Absolutely.
think a lot of people are so raw at this point, and like he was, I think,
Mhm.
and like we said, I do think he's sincere. I just hate that he spoke out of such a place of ignorance, and I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy in the room, but I'm just saying there are simple things that he said that would have been easy to dismantle, or at least just not say. Just like
rebut.
listen, like
Yeah.
ask somebody, you know, like.
Exactly.
And don't like just because like when he also said, well, you know, he had 30 something guns for some reason, which was legal.
How could
Yes.
this happen? Yes. it
Why
is
should we
legal.
have a limit on how many guns?
Yeah.
Like, why is that an issue? It shouldn't be an issue how many guns someone has.
And I think a big problem when it comes to mass shootings and stuff like that, Jimmy Kimmel opened it up by saying, how could this happen? Why would someone do this? And yes, it's horrible and it's unfathomable to most reasonable people, but it's a really simple evil, and it's a simple answer, and
Yeah.
it's because evil exists.
Right.
And when you live in, this is kind of the hard truth of it. Obviously, there's things that we can talk about. We'll get into a little bit later on how to mitigate these horrible acts and maybe hopefully stop them. But when you live in a free and open society, even when you don't live in a free and open society, you can never completely stop insane people, just pure evil people, from committing these kinds of acts.
You can
it
look
will
all through
always happen.
history.
It's always happened, and it always will happen.
Right. Because people suck.
Yeah.
So.
Just to get into that, but
Yeah.
so those were kind of some of the wrong ways to respond.
Well, the
to
ways,
this.
yeah, I felt were kind of a bad way to respond.
Exactly, because all of these happened within like 24 hours of the shooting, or
Yes.
within a day or two of the shooting.
Right.
But like we said, there's definitely a time and a place to talk about it, and I kind of want to start with the NRA's response,
Right.
which
So I was actually very impressed because so I don't know a ton about the NRA. I actually was very against them back when I first started going to college, and I was super liberal.
you were searching
I was searching. I was
on
lost.
the dark side.
Because if you listen to any mainstream thing, they're going to crap on the NRA.
They're a terrorist
like we just
organization.
mentioned that the ESPN reporter Kimmel also talked crap about them.
Mhm.
You're going to think they're the worst things ever.
Yeah.
But I think they had a super reasonable and great response to this. They are urging that new rules be put in place about what they're calling bump stock. So
Yeah.
if you listen to any videos of the shooting, you can find them on the internet. It sounds like the shooter's using an automatic weapon.
Mhm.
It's people that are gun people could hear that it wasn't actually an automatic weapon, just the way it sounds. I don't know how
It has
exactly.
little breaks.
There's a
in the
little
shooting.
bit of a difference, but what he actually had was a completely illegal semi-automatic gun
Mhm.
with a type of stock and trigger that when it shoots, it like resets very
Yeah.
quickly.
It uses the recoil of the gun. Your trigger finger stays in the same
And
motion. Uses the recoil of the gun to simulate automatic fire.
Exactly. So it's not the same as fully automatic
And it's
because
not
there's
as
nothing
fast.
internal.
Yeah.
It's just the way the stock recoils resets the trigger really fast. So it can essentially be fully automatic.
Yeah.
Now it's not as accurate as a fully automatic
not
guns,
as
which are already
practical.
not as accurate. But anyway,
And one thing, sorry, people asked why he had so many guns. I just thought this was interesting. With a semi-automatic rifle, the barrels aren't tested at fully
they're
automatic
not built
capacity.
to be fully automatic.
Yeah, so the reason he had so many guns is because he had to switch them out because shooting rounds that fast out of what is meant to be a semi-automatic heats the barrel up. It causes malfunctions to where the gun will just block up and not shoot, and then he would switch to another gun
Yeah.
that had a bump stock on it.
Right.
So this was kind of the NRA's response to the bump stock.
Was okay, listen. So this is what I think was great, and I really do think it's great. So it's like what can we glean from this and what can we do in the future to help prevent this, right? So like we had said earlier, he passed all the background checks. He had a pilot. He was a great from all accounts before this, he was a normal person. There's no way we can figure out the actual motives of someone before they do something. Like, like we can't get into people's
can't
brains.
stop someone.
We can do
It's
the
not
background
Minority
checks.
Report.
We can do kind of social analyzation, like
Simulations, yeah.
because gun owners can refuse selling to anybody they want. They can just be like, no, you're kind of sketchy. I'm not going to sell to you.
Yeah.
But so by all accounts, there's no way for us to do anything to figure out who the crazy people are, right? Besides banning all guns, which is, like we said, it's never going to happen.
Or if they have a preconceived mental illness.
Yeah. So the thing we could do is we could try to figure out better ways to diagnose mental illness, which is super complicated. I have no idea how we do that, but I do think it's something we need to adjust. But the other thing we can talk about is what he used.
Yeah.
And the fact that he used these bump stocks, which they're kind of in the gray area because they're completely illegal to buy because the gun, like to get an automatic gun, it's the gun, right?
Yeah.
This bump stock, it's illegal. It's totally illegal. You just buy it, you put it on your AR-15, and it becomes simulates fully auto.
And the reason it's legal is because the gun, it's still one trigger pull, one shot. That's if you don't know the difference. There's automatic, there's semi-automatic. People get confused because automatic is in the phrase semi-automatic. But semi-automatic is one trigger pull, one bullet. Automatic, you pull the trigger, you hold it down, it's going to fire out a
But
swath
if you
of
have automatic
bullets.
bullets in a semi-automatic,
Exactly.
what happens? No.
Thank you,
So anyway,
CBS.
the NRA, the National Rifles Association, are saying devices like this are designed to allow semi-automatic rifles to function like fully automatic rifles and should be subject to additional regulations.
Exactly.
They want an
Like
immediate
how-
review of whether or not these devices comply with federal law. That being the law of a fully automatic needing the tax stamp and
Yeah.
all of the additional background checks, waiting period, everything like that. So I think this is great. Like, so we can analyze and we can do something about
The
the fact
non-compromising terrorist organization, mega right-wing organization
Has
is
the-
compromising on this and saying,
Exactly.
hey, look, we need to look at this.
this quickly, and I think I am totally on board. Like it does, like so you'll hear the gun show loophole. It's not real. You look
Gun
it up.
show
It's not real.
loophole
The
is
online loophole you've
loophole
heard Hillary
isn't
talk
real.
about, not real.
If you don't believe
This-
it, please try and buy a gun online.
Buy a gun off Amazon.
Get shipped to an FFL and you have to go there, do a background check to pick it up.
Right. So yeah, that's not even a thing. So, but this is a loophole. This is
Yeah.
super kind of sketchy because it is.
It's a way to kind of
You're
circumvent it a
simulating
little bit.
fully auto, but it's technically semi-auto. It's kind of sketchy. Do we really need this? Personally, I'm on the side of the NRA. I do think that this falls under the idea that it's close enough to automatic that there probably needs to be additional regulation about
You could
them.
make it like a class 3 weapon,
Yeah,
like
just
how
like-
fully automatics are
Exactly.
now. It's more expensive. You have to wait almost
Yeah,
9 to
but then
12
again,
months.
if that happened, I do think they'd go away because they were designed strictly because they were able to circumvent.
People wouldn't make it because if you could just do that or wait
You
the
would
same
just
amount of
buy
time
an
and buy a fully
automatic.
automatic
Yeah,
weapon
exactly.
or something like
So
that.
that's great. So the NRA is urging for new rules and to analyze this, which is awesome because it is saying like, okay, listen, this is kind of sketchy with the fully automatic, semi-automatic, you know?
Yeah.
So let's look into this. I think it's a completely tame response, and it's a logical response. This is something we can actually enact legislation to
Mhm.
fix because he did use this. He was able to fire more rounds.
And I think that it was honestly a smart move by them too, because people can't, well, they can, but not factually claim that they're uncompromising and that they have no room for additional regulations and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, because it's just not true.
It's
'Cause we've
again,
seen them
if you
come
just
out.
look at the reality, like the fact that the people are so quick to label them hatred and that they're a terrorist organization. Like the first thing they did, this is just days after. They're like, all right, guys, listen, we realized what he used sounded fully automatic. It fired relatively quickly compared to a fully automatic. We need to talk about this because he kind of tricked the system.
Yeah.
And we've all known they've existed for a long time, but it's one of those things out of sight, out of mind. They haven't really been used. I can't think of another time one's been used in a shooting.
The only reason that it was effective is because he's, I think he was about 500 yards, 300
Yeah,
500 yards away, and he's shooting into a crowd of 40,000 people.
Yeah.
Like, if you took any other scenario, bump stocks aren't really functional. You go to the range and you shoot them for fun, but it's the recoil impulse.
It's the dumb
pretty
thing
hard.
you show your friend, hey, check out what I got. Like, I have like a fully automatic gun.
But nobody's going to use it on a defense rifle or anything
Right.
like that because they're unreliable, they malfunction a lot, and it's just very impulsive where the bullets
Right,
are
and
go.
think about it. The gun's recoil, you use the recoil, it's not stable.
No,
you know?
not at all. It's not really a practical thing. But like I said, I think that it's something that most gun owners haven't even heard of, and the ones who have probably don't have it unless they just want to have fun with it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would be willing to give this up to show that they're willing to compromise. It's not really that big of a deal.
Right.
I kind of lean on the side where I don't think it should be banned just because I don't think that just because someone used it in a horrible tragedy that
Right.
it should be banned. I'm not a fan of just giving up freedoms or devices
Yeah.
just because someone used it in a heinous act, but I'm not going to die on the hill over this one. You know
No.
what I mean? It's just a bump fire stock. I think it's kind of
I'm never ever gonna buy one,
Um,
and I don't know. Honestly, I can't think of a good use case for them. Like you said, they're not reliable. They're not great. I don't. Again, even honestly, if you know anything about guns, like even just fully automatic guns, like there's not a ton of use for them. Like,
most people put it in a 2-shot burst configuration,
or
and that's the most versatile and effective way
because
to use a
you just
firearm.
can't fire fully automatics accurately, and
Yeah.
so it's like, I think it's great, and I like that they were like.
It was a good response.
It was a great response, and I hate that it's being kind of pushed on. Like, I would love to see Democrats and people that want gun control be like, okay, great, this is a conversation we can have. Let's not jump to like Florida people, like let's just do the assault rifle ban again.
Yeah.
Just ban all the assault rifles when it's like, no, what was the issue? The issue wasn't the fact that he had this gun that was an assault rifle. It was that he was firing it so fast.
Yeah.
And he put out so many, shot over 1,000 rounds, bro. That was a lot of rounds.
He hit over 600 people.
Yeah. So it's just like, this is something that I do think should be talked about. And I think it's a good thing to be talked about. It's very tame. And that made me think a lot better of the NRA. I don't know much about it. I didn't want to do more research now.
It makes me want to join the NRA.
It does.
Almost,
It's like,
honestly,
I am
now.
down for this.
I do want to do
because
that.
I do think
if I wasn't a poor college student, I would probably be joining it already.
Yeah, this is the common sense gun control that I hate that word because whenever the Democrats roll it out, common sense, it's never common sense.
Because they're talking about
They're just
background
trying
checks that are already there.
Yeah, exactly. But this was great. I also really like T.I.'s response. So if you don't know who T.I. is a rapper.
Yeah.
He's got a kind of a history with guns. But someone tried to catch up with him as he was getting into a car and ask him about it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably he's a huge Black Lives Matter supporter. Probably expecting him to be like, well, let's ban guns. But T.I.'s response, I think, was really great, where he said, as long as criminals can have them, I think citizens should be able to have them too. I think there should be like mental evaluations. The same for people running for president, by the way, he concluded. So I think he makes a very salient argument of, yes, the criminals can have them. I think civilians could have them because I think he understands if you outlaw them, guess who's still going to have them?
Yeah.
The criminals.
Mm-hmm.
The citizens will not. And as long as the criminals have them, why are we taking away the guns from the citizens?
Yeah. And you're never going to get rid of 300 million guns in a
You're
country
not
like
going to do that.
Yeah.
And let's not even are we even going to talk about the fact that most of the cities that guns are banned have the highest gun violence?
We definitely need to do a separate video on all that kind of stuff.
There's facts and information that need to be brought up, and this needs to be talked reasonably and in reality. Because the reality is the majority of shootings are not done by assault rifles, weapons.
Not.
There's more
Not
killings
even
by
rifles.
knives than by AR-15s.
Yes.
Why are we trying to ban AR-15s? It doesn't make any sense.
And because you can't come right out and say, "Oh, we want to ban handguns," because Americans aren't going to support them. Not at all. The vast majority of Americans believe in the historic and well enshrined right of owning firearms.
Right.
Okay?
And then that's just to talk about the Second Amendment, which we can do a whole video on that too, because the Second Amendment, I'm sorry, it's there to keep guns. Not there for militia. It's not there strictly for militia. It's not there strictly for muskets.
Yeah.
It's about self-defense and about an armed population being the best control mechanization mechanism,
Mechanism.
control
There you go.
mechanism for a tyrannical government.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Which
if you just
at that time they were the most scared of, and it makes sense. They just came from Britain. They
Yeah.
fought Britain,
It
the
makes-
biggest army in the world at the time,
yeah.
and won.
And I
Pretty
mean, the
impressive.
Constitution, right? Colin Moriarty did a video
Yep.
about this, and one thing he said is that the Constitution is a contract, essentially, between the American population and the government, right? An amendment in there is that Americans have the right to bear arms, and if you look at it, people can get confused on the wording of the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
It's really not that confusing if you're able to comprehend sentence structure, really, because it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the safety and security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So it's telling you the reason is for a militia, and then the subject of it is saying that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's very, very specific on what it means. You'll hear a lot of people in the mainstream media say, oh, no, it's only for militia. No, it's saying a reason for it is that they didn't even go so far as to say hunting. If you went up and you asked the founders, like, is it for hunting and self-defense? They would be like, no, it's not for that. We wrote it in the Second Amendment. We wrote it countless times in the Federalist Papers. It's being a well-armed populace is the only check on a state army is basically is what they wrote in the Federalist Papers, and that's what it's for.
Right, and it's important to understand what the Bill of Rights and like the amendments are. Is it's not the government saying you're allowed to have a gun. It's saying the government does not have the right to take them or infringe on your inalienable right to defend yourself with a gun.
Absolutely.
It's not saying the government's letting you have a gun. It's saying the government cannot touch the fact that you have a gun.
Yeah.
Like it's not something they can take away. It's the fact that they can't infringe and take our guns.
And the argument that the founders couldn't perceive that we would have fully automatic just falls completely apart, because then, like, okay, well, there's TV, so does free speech not apply to people on televisions or the internet? Because there's no way the founders could have anticipated.
Right.
We had this global World Wide Web.
Right.
Or you know what I mean?
And not like and the about the warrantless searches, like
Does that
that
protect your
amendment
iPhone?
has protected phones and stuff, which
Exactly.
they didn't like back then. All it
Credit
meant
card
was crap
information,
in your
yeah.
house because that's where you kept everything.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we understand what they meant, and the meaning behind it was not
Absolutely.
what's in your house. It's your property,
So
which includes phones, which includes computers. Like that's
And you
things
can
that
do
they
that
need a warrant for.
with pretty much every
Every
amendment.
amendment.
If anyone brings up the fact that any amendment, the second is typically the one they do, is outdated, it's just not. It's not.
Right.
That's
you
not
have
at
we
all.
have papers of the founding fathers signing off on citizens getting cannons. Like
Yeah.
if you think that they didn't want people to have military grade weapons, you're out of your mind.
And see, people argue like AR-15s are not even military
They're
style
not military
assault
weapons.
rifles. Yeah, so
People- yeah.
we don't. When the founders wrote that, they intended for citizens to have military
well,
grade.
the only weapons were military
were
grade.
military grade weapons, and they knew about other ones that were coming out. And now AR-15s are not military grade weapons,
Right, because
at all.
I think you could make the argument like they wanted people to be well armed. At that time, the only option was to be as armed as the weapons used by the government, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
they didn't even have a governmental army; it was a militia at that time. But like, in
state.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so like they wanted them to be as armed as the we're not armed as the military. We've already given up a lot of the
We've
Second
already given
Amendment
up
because
fully
we are
automatic
not
weapons. Yeah,
we're not
exactly.
as armed as the military, which at the time that they never mentioned anything about them saying they should be armed but not as well as
Not
the government
quite
just
as
in
much
case.
so, yeah.
Like no, it was they should be armed. End of the
That's it,
sentence.
period, yeah.
Right. So we've already given up a lot, and why should we give up more? And it's just like you should never give up rights. Don't give up rights because of fear, because of emotion. This is where the time thing comes into play, because I think that now is the time to talk. I do not think now is the time to enact legislation.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it. Let's visit it. Let's get a discussion going, but nothing should be done out of rashness. And it shouldn't, like, especially when it's involving rights. Like, let's not just give up rights quickly.
Absolutely.
Because,
100%.
I mean, I've already have instances in my life where, like, one instance is all it takes for me personally for it to be worth it, right?
Yeah.
I've already had an instance in my life where I was very happy and I felt like I needed my gun to protect me and the people I care about.
Yeah.
And that one instance has solidified for the rest of my life that I'm going to be pro-gun because that's all that matters. Like, that one instance was worth it.
Yeah.
So I don't care if it happens to you once in your life that you're like, ooh, glad I had a gun because it defended myself. That's all that matters. Like,
Absolutely.
if it happens
Only
once,
takes one time.
that's enough. And the person that was causing the issue didn't have a gun.
Yeah.
So taking away guns and that my situation, all it would have done would have made me defenseless.
Yeah.
So I think it's ridiculous, and that's why I'm never going to be anti-gun, because I have proof in my life where it's like, okay, this is why we have them, because people don't understand when things are great, when it doesn't affect you, you're easy to give up. Like, well, we don't need to, we don't need am I ever going to really use a gun? Probably not. So
And
let's
if you
just
tell
give it
some-
up.
Exactly.
But then it's like, when push comes to shove, you're going to want that right. And why would we give that up when there's no real reason to give it up? Because like we said, there's really nothing we could have done to stop this shooting. I mean, he flew under the radar. Like,
Absolutely.
you're not going to figure out these sleeper people that are psycho.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah.
And so it's just super frustrating. I get super amped up about it because people that don't know what they're talking about are trying to enact laws that take away rights from me. And it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Why are you trying to take my right? Like, it's just, ugh.
And it's pretty icky to me for people to bring it up right after a mass shooting, right? Because there were 59 people that were killed, and it's horrible. But if you look at the month of Chicago, in June, over 89 people. In September, there was like 60-something people. This is just a typical month for Chicago. And I don't want to jump into the gun numbers too much because I feel like we definitely need to do a separate video on that. But it's much easier to get people's feelings on your side when you're talking about a bunch of defenseless people who were in a concert who were open fired on.
Right.
But when you look at Chicago, more people die there in a month than what happened in the most deadly mass shooting in modern US history.
Yeah.
But people never talk about that. And I think it's definitely a problem. And it's just kind of evidence that it's playing to people's emotions in politicizing, never letting a crisis go to waste.
Right. So let me just ask you real quick, because I'm curious now. Is there anything that you would take away from this that you think should be looked at, enacted, discussed?
I mean, I think that definitely mental illness, mental health things need to be talked about if someone has a record of mental illness. But this is when it gets hard, because what if it's your son that has a mental illness, but you as the father don't have one? Are you allowed to buy a gun? I think you should still be allowed to own a gun. And then what's the law? You're required to keep it in a safe in your house. That would make sense to me. How the heck is that going to be enforced?
Right.
So it's really hard to do. I mean, you can talk about banning bump fire stocks, like you said, but I am 100% convinced that if that was made illegal, he would have just used semi-automatic weapons, because you can't.
But it
stop
probably would
people
have been
from
less,
doing this.
a little bit less people.
Yeah, there might have been, and that's why I think it's a worthwhile discussion to definitely have about bump stocks. But I'm never on the side of giving up rights because a tragedy happens. I would much rather live in a free society that gives me the rights and the liberty to protect myself and defend people I care about, but it might be slightly more dangerous.
Right.
And that's not really a popular thing to say at all. People, a
Let's
lot
be
of
as safe
people
as
would say,
possible.
oh, I want to be as safe as possible, and if I have to give up these rights. But I think it's absolutely a false sense of security.
It totally is, because police officers, the military, the people that you're giving up your guns and saying they're going to protect you, they don't stop crime. Cops don't show up till after something happens.
Exactly.
Someone breaks into your house. You're on the street. Someone pulls a knife on you. The only thing that's going to happen is
That's going to stop you
right
from
then.
getting hurt. Is you.
Like, the cops can't help. The military can't help. They don't help prevent, like, the crime's going to happen and then they can come.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
in the heat of the moment, when it matters, when it's your life on the line, someone you care about, the only thing is something that you can do.
Absolutely.
And a gun escalates a situation where you potentially have control. Again, this is all under the guise of you understanding what happens when you pull a gun, what it means to pull a gun on someone. Like, this is, again, assuming that you understand what you're doing when you pull a gun. Like, you don't pull a gun out on someone unless you intend to shoot them.
Yeah.
Like, you don't point it at someone unless you intend to shoot them. Your finger isn't on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Like, there's just basic things
of
that
very basic
normal
things.
people understand that have guns. Like,
Yeah.
There's a lot of caveats, but at the same time, like you said, no, like, why give up rights? Why give up safety? And when people look at other countries, like, it's kind of like Colin Morata we talked about. He says he thinks it's embarrassing and it's kind of shameful when you see other countries that gave up their guns.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I tend to agree, because it is something unique to America. I mean, we are a violent, historic country. Like, we became America because we were able to defend ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's tradition. I think it's cool. I love that.
That's not a bad thing at all.
No,
Every
it's not.
country
I
has
think-
been incredibly violent in their histories. You know what I mean? Unless you're Australia or Canada. But I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and like, we don't have the proof that banning assault weapons works, because we had them banned. There is no
and
discernible.
violent crime has been trending down since
Violent
the
crime
90s,
is
which
way
nobody
down.
wants to talk about.
way
That's an
down. Gun
important
ownership is
thing
way
to
up.
Throw out there, yeah, absolutely.
And countries like France that have no guns, well, they had one of the
There's
biggest
still
mass
huge
shootings
mass
in
shootings. There were over
2015.
50 people, yeah, that were killed then.
130 something people were killed. Remember in Paris, with there was like 7 people that shot people. awful.
Yeah,
Like,
it was awful.
guns are illegal there.
Yeah.
Why are there still gun
It
violence?
doesn't
Well,
stop.
because the
Guns
bad
illegal
guys
in
are going to have
Chicago,
guns.
like we talked about. It's definitely an issue. But like, is there anything that you think that could be implemented?
Well,
to
so
stop this?
yeah, because I think it's important that we need to talk about this, and I do think like in a perfect world where I wouldn't be scared of ground being ceded just for more ground to be ceded. Where if I
The
think,
slippery slope.
yeah, you know what I'm saying. Like
argument.
I am under the impression because I think all the politicians have kind of have earned the assumption that you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, right?
Absolutely.
But so take that out of the equation. Like if I'm just thinking, like I do think bump fire stock should be under the guise of the automatic, because why are we banning automatics? Because of how fast they can fire.
Mhm.
That's what the bump
The
stock
amount of
lets you
firepower
do.
goes, Yeah.
So there's nothing else about the automatic that should, for me, is a reason why we should have it legal, because it's solely because of how fast they fire.
Yeah.
So if you have something that enables your semi-automatic to fire close, I understand they don't fire as fast.
Yeah.
I think that they should
Simulate
be
full
as
automatic fire.
regulated. I think there needs to be more mental health checks. I mean, I think that like instance with legislation being passed in the heat of the moment and people saying things like maybe we should talk about wait periods because people are brash in the heat of the moment. I know in Florida where I got my pistol, I had like a 4-day wait period to get it, my handgun. I think in
Really?
Georgia,
I didn't know that.
in Georgia there's none, right?
No.
So yeah, in Florida there is a wait period for handguns, not for ARs, and then as soon as you have a concealed carry, there is no wait period, which I kind of like. So
Absolutely,
if
'cause
you're
you
just a
passed.
normal person, there's a wait period. If you pay the money, you go through the extensive background check, then you can circumvent that wait period.
Yeah.
That seems like a logical
I love
solution
paying
to
the
me.
government to allow me to exercise my rights. It's wonderful.
Well, it's not. Yeah, exactly.
No, I
that's
know-
where
I get what you're
that's where the
saying.
compromise comes in, because yes, you can still get your guns, but
I wanna
honestly,
look
what is
into-
a situation where it's gonna hurt you to wait a week? I know it sucks, but just like I'm trying to think, because I do
Yeah.
think
I mean, there might be someone who maybe they have. This is kind of the example that's used most because I think there's been some data to
Like
back it up, but
wives?
it doesn't happen. Yeah, like if a girlfriend has a specifically violent boyfriend,
Mhm.
they're in a bad situation, they need to go or they want to
Yeah.
go get a firearm to protect themselves.
and I think
But
I would need to see the statistics of how often that happens.
And I want to look into how often people just buy a gun and then instantly day of or something
True.
like that go out and commit
We
these
need the
horrible acts.
information.
Because this guy, obviously, this was completely premeditated.
No,
He
well, they
stockpiled
said-
these guns for...
Well, they
a
said between
while.
October of last year and September of this year, they think something happened because he bought 33 guns. That's a
Yeah.
lot of guns to buy in
Yeah.
like less than a year. And so maybe there's
Or
something
people have
about
talked about where like you can't buy X amount of guns within a
right.
certain amount of
But
time.
it's hard because once you start talking about that, the law-abiding citizens being affected and his rights are being infringed a little bit. So then we have
Absolutely.
to talk about, well, what's reasonable and what is gonna try to help the most, but not also hurt the most for the law-abiding citizen. And this is where
And what are the externalities of that? Because if you're saying, oh, you can only buy X amount of guns in a month, well, the person can say, okay, well, I might just go buy a gun that a private citizen's selling, which doesn't have a background check at all. So I
Right.
would much rather have that person be able to buy the guns, but undergo the background checks.
right, because
If-
and
you know
that's
what
the
I mean?
thing.
Than going to a private citizen and buying and there be no background checks
Right.
at all. That's a different discussion. But that could incentivize someone to go purchase something privately instead of go
Mhm.
through the background checks that are when you buy a gun online at
Yeah.
a gun show through any kind of dealer.
You go through a background check,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so I
So it's an interesting
it
conversation
is,
to have.
and these are what we need to have. Is we need to have conversations, and I think that I don't know anybody I do know people personally, but none that I don't think could have a reasonable discussion about of the other side. You know, like
Mhm.
what do they think is a reasonable? I don't think many
Check
of them
on
have.
something like
Yeah,
that.
because I do think there is ways we can. Everything can be improved, and I think there are ways that we could decrease the how often these happen.
Yeah.
Because they are happening a lot.
I think one thing that definitely would help is media coverage of it, not throwing out the name of it, not covering it for this huge incident. Obviously, the news has to do their job, and I'm split on if they should mention the name or not. I feel like on one hand, I don't want it mentioned because I don't want to incentivize people to,
Mhm.
troubled people to shoot and then their name be glorified or,
Yeah.
infamous. But then again, also it's the news. They have a duty and a responsibility to report the facts as part of the facts. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of torn on that. But I really think that if it wasn't covered and it didn't change society's opinions for days at a time and just, it didn't have this huge effect on the American psyche and the American society, I
Mm.
think that maybe less people would do it.
Maybe.
Again,
I just
don't
think
know,
honestly the
but-
biggest thing is we need to address the fact that America is pretty mentally unhealthy. Like if you,
some
I think
people. I think
no,
it's
I
incredible
think-
that there's 330 million guns And what was it? Since
So little.
1989, there's been like 90 mass shootings, which are qualified as 4 or more people being shot.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm
there's-
just talking about on the whole. Like, I think that you can look at America on the whole and understand that we have an issue. There's something wrong with
A
us.
gun violence. Or
No,
a violence
just
issue.
a mental issue, because I think the mental part is the biggest thing. We're overly medicated. We had Hillary
yeah, you
Clinton
look at
and
the
Donald
opioid.
Trump as our 2 candidates. Something is wrong in our heads.
Hillary Clinton
People-
won the popular vote.
We're super divisive right now. Like,
Yeah,
there is
super
more hatred now than I felt in my lifetime at any other point. Like, there are issues that need to be discussed outside of just the fact of guns.
Sure.
Like, there are way more issues, because you saw with this Scalise guy. He did that for a political reason.
The
He
guy
hated
who would
Republicans, so
actually-
he shot him. Like,
Yeah.
it's not the gun's fault. It's the fact that he hated Republicans so much, he thought it was okay to go out and shoot them
Absolutely.
with a weapon. Like,
Absolutely.
that's messed up. That's a mental problem.
And I
you
think,
know?
yeah, and I
And
think,
you see with the women's marches, well, not strictly the women's, but just the hatred and the protest and the Antifa
Tons
crap.
of
Like,
marches.
there are issues that,
the white nationalists, the Antifa.
right, there's
it's
just
problems.
problems we
Very
need to address
polarizing.
and understand that these issues are broader than just the fact that we have easier access to guns than most countries. Because I
Absolutely.
don't think that inherently is the problem.
Yeah.
I honestly don't. I think the fact that we are so many guns and we have so little in response to how many guns we have, that says something about it, you know?
Absolutely.
And so I just think that I hate all the misinformation. Just hurts the conversation, because you have people that are just going to immediately throw it aside. Anyone that spreads this misinformation is uninformed, and then
And
be
it's
like,
happening all the time.
oh,
when
it
you
happens
look
all
at
the time with
media
everything
outlets.
politically.
Yeah.
And it's just so depressing. And then you have Hillary Clinton saying, don't politicize it, but by the way, if he had silencers, it'd be worse. Well, no, I don't think you understand how silencers work. I
Yeah.
mean, I think people saying people drop dead next to them would cause an uproar. It's not like he would have, if he had a silencer, he would have killed every single person without
Would
them
have
knowing,
no
because
idea about the
Hollywood.
person.
So yeah, it's just, I don't know what I just think that we need to have discussions, and we need to be honest about the discussions.
And take the time to grieve and mourn for the loss, and pay homage to the heroes of the stories
Right.
before you instantly politicize. And
Right,
like we
and-
said, I have no problem with talking about policies and ways to fix certain problems after the fact, but give it a little bit of time.
Right.
And I think that's kind of a main thing that we talked about here, is just not letting your political biases get in the way. And whether it's an opportunity, not just a mass shooting, but whether if there's an opportunity to kind of further your narrative on a political agenda, just wait a little bit, make sure that it checks out, that it's completely
Right.
verified and stuff like that, and then go out there and present your idea in a cohesive, logical, factual way.
Right.
And then there's no problems with it, and then we can have an open discussion without calling people complicit in these horrible, heinous
And
acts
liking
of
terrorist
violence.
organizations.
Exactly.
And like you had said before, like the only person responsible for this is the man that shot everybody.
Absolutely.
The person that sold them the guns is not. The person that sold them the ammo. I know I freaking hate that Columbine documentary that Michael Moore did, because I remember him specifically pulling forward the victims to Kmart to scream at the people that sold the shooter ammo.
Yeah.
It is not their fault that they sold him ammo.
And-
it's this psycho dude that thought it was okay to go shoot up a freaking college.
And
That's the problem.
100% agree, and it plays it in kind of last point, because we're both
Yeah,
very passionate
yeah,
about
we
this,
could go on for
obviously.
freaking ever.
But just because if you're shot, that doesn't make you an expert on gun legislation. If
No.
you have a horrible sickness like Jimmy Kimmel's kid or something, it doesn't make you an expert on healthcare. What makes you an expert is spending the time to research the statistics and go through it and come up with a cohesive argument and something to present.
Not emotion.
And yeah, exactly. And it's hard, because you can't tell someone who's been shot and came back like, oh no, your opinion doesn't matter. But in reality, their opinion matters just as much as the person next to them.
Right.
Unless, they're an expert or something, or they have facts to back it up and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But just because you've undergone some kind of trauma doesn't make you a professional or an expert in the specific field.
Yep.
And so I hate when people freaking bring on the mothers of people who were shot by police officers, or someone who was shot in a mass shooting, to come talk about it, because they'll convince you. No, their opinion is just as valid as the person next door.
As a guy that owns a bunch of guns that never does anything and understands the Second Amendment.
100%.
Yep.
And that just bothers the living heck out of me. But with that being said, guys, definitely tell us what your opinion is on the matter, on the Second Amendment, whatever we talked about. Leave a comment below. We really appreciate
let us know.
that.
What do you think should be the response? What's an appropriate response after these things? Because I mean, they're just heinous, horrible, disgusting acts that I mean, I don't know what else to say besides that, because they're just gross. And I think that it's on everyone to just say these are bad. And then what can we do to improve society in a response to this?
And another thing, why it's important. Sorry, I hate
Yeah,
it,
I know, right?
But I keep thinking of that. Like, another thing, it's important to not politicize it is because it's important for people to come together. Everyone can unify, except for disgusting people.
No one
at
wants
CBS.
innocent people to get shot.
Exactly. Everyone can come together and condemn that. And if we had a full 48-hour period where everyone was together in condemning it, that is great. That's healthy for society. But the second you have someone saying, oh, well, silencers are terrible, and oh, automatic rounds, which don't exist, are terrible, then you can't unify with them and say it's horrible, because they're throwing in these externalities that are completely unfactual and unbasis.
Literally
So
made up.
it's so important to be able to come together on these things.
Right.
But with that being said, guys, it is great to be back. We're happy to be back. We're going to jump right back into it, have more content for you guys. Be sure and check out our website, beyondborders.com. We got some stuff coming down the line, different articles and stuff that we're happy about that we're going to be putting out. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter.
SoundCloud.
SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, everywhere. Check us out, guys. And until next week, always remember, stay informed.